king was screaming in the night, not from war, not from enemies, but from a dream he could not remember. Across Babylon, soldiers were sharpening their swords. An execution order had already been signed. And somewhere in the city, a young Hebrew captive named Daniel was on his knees, praying, because by morning, every wise man in the kingdom was scheduled to die. This is not just a Bible story. This is a survival story, a faith story, a story of what happens when a man refuses to bow, even when death is guaranteed. Welcome to the Epic Christian, where Bible stories are not just told, they are felt. If you love deep, powerful, faith-building stories, subscribe now, because this story gets darker before it gets glorious. Jerusalem was not just a city, it was identity, it was worship, it was home, and now it was burning. Babylonian soldiers crashed through the gates with swords raised and torches lit. The walls were broken, the temple was looted, sacred vessels were ripped from God's house as if they meant nothing. Men were beaten, women were dragged, children were pulled from their mothers' arms, fathers were separated from sons, mothers were separated from daughters, families were torn apart in seconds. Chains clanked, feet stumbled, tears fell. Among the captives was a young man named Daniel. Beside him stood three close friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They had grown up together, they had prayed together, they had worshiped together. Now they were bound together, in chains. They were forced to march for weeks across burning deserts toward Babylon. The sun scorched their skin by day, cold winds cut their bodies by night, dust filled their mouths, hunger twisted their stomachs, thirst cracked their lips. Some fell along the way, some could not continue, some were left behind. Daniel watched people collapse from exhaustion. He watched old men stumble. He watched children cry until they had no strength left. Every step took him farther from home and closer to the unknown. He did not know where they were taking him. He did not know what awaited him. He did not know if he would live. He did not know if he would ever see Jerusalem again. But even as Babylon took their freedom, it could not take their God. And that would become Babylon's problem. Night after night, Daniel lay awake on the hard ground, staring at foreign stars. He wondered if God could still hear him so far from Jerusalem. He wondered if the prayers he whispered into the dust still reached heaven. He watched stronger men break. He watched proud men cry. He watched hope fade from faces around him. But something inside Daniel refused to die. Even in chains, he believed. Even in fear, he trusted. Even in exile, he prayed. And while Babylon thought it was leading captives, God was leading a prophet. Babylon did not rule by chains alone. Babylon ruled by conversion. King Nebuchadnezzar did not just want servants, he wanted loyalty. He wanted minds. He wanted hearts. He selected the brightest and strongest young men from the captives, not to work in fields, but to serve in palaces, not to be slaves, but to be reprogrammed. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were taught Babylonian language, Babylonian science, Babylonian literature, Babylonian religion. They were trained to think like Babylonians, to speak like Babylonians, to honor Babylonian gods. They were surrounded by idols. They were pressured by teachers. They were mocked by others. Every day, Babylon tried to erase who they were. Even their names were changed. Daniel became Belteshazzar. Hananiah became Shadrach. Mishael became Meshach. Azariah became Abednego. It was not cosmetic. It was spiritual. Erase their identity. Rewrite their loyalty. Babylon was not trying to use them. Babylon was trying to own them. Then came the king's food.
Rich, royal, heavy with meat and wine, offered as a privilege. To eat it would be easy. To refuse it would be dangerous. Daniel felt the pressure. He was young. He was far from home. He had no influence, no protection, no voice. One wrong move and he could be beaten or killed. But he had conviction. He remembered the laws of his God. He remembered the covenant. He remembered who he was. Daniel did not shout. He did not protest. He did not rebel. He simply refused, quietly, respectfully, firmly. He asked for vegetables and water. 10 days, that was all. The official was afraid. If Daniel became weak, he would be punished. If Daniel collapsed, he could be executed. But the test was allowed. For 10 long days, Daniel and his friends trusted God. They watched others feast on rich food. They smelled roasted meat. They saw wine poured. They drank water. They ate vegetables. They prayed. At night, hunger growled in their stomachs. In the morning, they stood again. No shortcuts, no excuses, no compromise. And when the days ended, the impossible happened. They were healthier, stronger, clearer in mind, sharper in appearance. Babylon could educate them, but Babylon could not dominate them. This was the first sign, and heaven was watching. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar woke up shaking. His heart was racing, his sleep was broken, his spirit was disturbed. He had dreamed, but the dream was gone. He could feel its weight, he could sense its power, but he could not remember it. He summoned his magicians, his astrologers, his wise men. They whispered, they argued, they failed. The king's face darkened, his voice rose, his patience snapped. In fury, he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. Not some, all. That included Daniel and his friends. Death was not coming, death was scheduled. Soldiers moved, names were listed, orders were passed. Panic spread, fear moved through the palace. Daniel did not run, he did not hide. He went to prayer with Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They shut the door, they fell to their knees, they cried out to God, they begged for mercy, they asked for revelation, they pleaded for their lives. And that night, heaven answered. Daniel was brought before Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man on earth, the ruler of empires, the destroyer of cities. The room was heavy. Guards stood ready. Silence filled the space. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. One mistake could cost his life. One wrong word could end everything. But he did not tremble. He did not boast. He said calmly, "There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries."
Not, "I am smart." Not, "I am gifted." But God. He revealed the dream. He explained the meaning. He declared God's sovereignty. He spoke of kingdoms rising. He spoke of kingdoms falling. He spoke of God's kingdom that would never end. The room went silent. The great king stared. Then he bowed. The captive was promoted. The exile was elevated. The servant of God was vindicated. But promotion attracts attention, and attention attracts trouble. Nebuchadnezzar later built a golden image, massive, shining, towering above the crowd, and he commanded everyone to bow. Music played, crowds gathered, fear spread, men fell to their knees, women bowed their heads, hearts trembled, everyone, except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They stood. They did not flinch, they did not move, they did not bow. They were reported. They were dragged before the king. Threats were shouted. Anger was unleashed. The furnace was heated 7 times hotter. The flames roared. The heat burned. The soldiers who pushed them in were killed by the fire. But inside the furnace, they were walking. Not burning, not screaming, not collapsing. Walking. And a 4th figure was with them. Divine, holy, glorious. The king staggered back in shock. When they came out, their clothes were not burned, their hair was not singed, there was no smell of smoke on them. Fire had no authority over faith. Years passed. Nebuchadnezzar grew proud. He walked in his palace boasting of his greatness. He praised himself. He exalted his power. Daniel warned him. He ignored the warning, and suddenly his mind broke. He lost reason, he lost dignity, he lost control. He was driven from people, He lived like an animal. He ate grass. He slept in fields. The king of the world became a beast in the dust, until one day he lifted his eyes to heaven, and when he humbled himself, God restored him. Daniel watched it all. He learned something terrifying and powerful. God raises kings, and God breaks kings. Years later, Babylon was ruled by Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's descendant. By this time, Babylon was corrupt, weak, arrogant. Enemies were already at the gates, armies were closing in, yet Belshazzar threw a party. He drank wine, he laughed loudly, he mocked God. He used sacred vessels from God's temple as cups for his wine. He lifted them in mockery. He did not fear God, he insulted God. And heaven responded. In the middle of the feast, a hand appeared, writing on the wall. The music stopped. The laughter died. The room froze.
The king's face turned pale. His knees knocked. His hands shook. No one could interpret the writing. They called Daniel, now an old man, still faithful, still fearless. Daniel stood before the king and said, "God has numbered your days. You have been weighed and found wanting. Your kingdom is finished." That same night, Babylon fell. Belshazzar was killed, exactly as God said. A new king rose, King Darius, and once again Daniel was promoted. Even in old age, excellence followed him, and jealousy followed excellence. They searched for fault. They watched his life. They examined his actions. They found nothing, so they attacked his prayer life. A law was signed. No prayer except to the king. Daniel knew. He read the law, he understood the danger, and Daniel prayed anyway. He opened his windows, he knelt down, he lifted his voice. They saw him. They reported him. He was arrested. The king was distressed. He tried to save him, but the law could not be changed. The stone was rolled, the seal was set. Daniel was lowered into darkness. Cold air, rough stone, heavy silence. Then growls. Eyes glowed, breath steamed, teeth flashed. Death surrounded him. In the darkness, Daniel could hear the low rumble of the lions breathing. He could smell their hunger. He could sense their movement around him. Every human instinct told him to panic, to run, to scream. But instead, Daniel whispered a prayer, not for escape, but for faith. He committed his spirit into God's hands, and in that moment, fear lost its grip. He trusted, and heaven moved. An angel came. Mouths were shut. Power was restrained. The lions lay still. And while the king did not sleep, Daniel rested. At dawn, the king ran. "Daniel, has your God saved you?" Daniel replied calmly, "My God sent his angel." And he came out, untouched. The lions did not lose their power. They lost their permission. In his later years, Daniel studied scripture. He read the words of Jeremiah. He counted the years. He understood the time. And he prayed. Not small prayer, not quick prayer, deep prayer, confessing prayer, interceding prayer. He wept. He repented. He cried for his people. And heaven answered. Gabriel came. Revelation came. Future was revealed. Messiah was promised. And Daniel remained faithful to the end. He was not loud. He was not violent. He was not rebellious. He was faithful. And that faith outlived kings, outlasted empires, and silenced lions. If this story touched you, encouraged you, or strengthened your faith, then you belong here. This is the Epic Christian, where Bible stories come alive with power, depth, and truth. Subscribe to the Epic Christian for more epic Bible stories, powerful prayers, and life-changing faith content. When pressure comes, will you bow? When laws change, will you hide? When danger rises, will you pray? Because Daniel did, and history was never the same. So I ask you, when your moment comes, what will you do?
Put your answer in the comments section.